hotel lobby in Iraq a number of years ago, minding my own business, working at a table like this. My laptop was out in front of me, and the chai guy, who I'd gotten to know a little bit over the previous months of going in and out of this hotel in Iraq, working in their cafe, he approached me as he served me my tea, and he said, "You know, Mr. Jeremy, we're friends now, right? Can I ask you a favor?" And I said, "Sure, man, go ahead." And he said, "Well, you know, I've got this cousin. He's a guy about our age, mid-20s, and he's got this little girl. And, you know, she was born with this huge hole in her heart, and there's not a hospital or a doctor left in all of Iraq that can save her life. You're an American. Can you help us?" Now, I did what any of you would have done in that moment. I said, "No, absolutely not. I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about helping children with heart surgery. I don't know anything about sending children outside of Iraq. No, I don't think I can help you." Prior to that, this question always comes, so let me get it out of the way. Why were we in Iraq in the first place? I had been living in the region, and my wife and I had been living just a couple hours outside of Iraq. We had a 1-year-old baby girl, and as the war broke out and then began to kind of reach some of its height of intensity, the Sunni-Shia conflict and the major years of bloodletting that were going on in Iraq, we actually developed some friendships in the country. And some of the people that we knew invited us to come into Iraq and begin trying to help. They were working with refugees, they were working with widows and orphans and doing some incredible things, and thought we might have a place in part of what they were doing. So I started making these forays into Iraq just to visit and just to see what was going on. I wasn't at all interested in moving there. I wasn't really sure if that was for us. And some of those first trips in, you know, there was this looming question in the background, are we going to move there? And so my wife would send me on these trips. And I remember the first or second time after I came back, my wife and a couple of teammates were sitting up in the living room, midnight when my flight landed back in Istanbul, Turkey, where we were living at that time. And my wife is sitting up and saying, "So, how was the trip? Are we moving to Iraq?" We wanted to be a part of helping people. We wanted to be a part of alleviating some of the suffering that we were seeing on the news in Iraq. We wanted to come alongside the Iraqi people. We wanted to be a part of the solution. So my wife asked, "Are we moving to Iraq?" And I said, it was incredible. I mean, the things that are happening there are unlike anything I've ever seen. The need is off the charts. But I also sat with people who are experiencing these phenomenal breakthroughs in other areas that they're really excited about. And I would sit in these meetings with tribal leaders or with religious clerics or with different people and hear these stories that blew my mind. And I would think while sitting over tea, we have to move to this country. We have to be a part of this. Then we'd walk outside and a bomb would go off and I'd feel the heat on my face, or I'd look up and see sentries posted on the walls trying to guard this little place where we were, and I'd think, I can't move here. We can't move our little 1-year-old girl and raise a family here. So I told my wife in that moment, no, I don't think we can handle it. It's incredible. The need is awesome. It's right up our alley, except for the fact that it's insane, and I don't think we can do that. My wife in that midnight moment said, "Okay. Well, you know, we've been praying here in this living room while you've been gone the last couple days in Iraq, and we're moving to Iraq." So we did. A couple months later, we moved to Iraq, and so now I'm sitting in this hotel. This guy asked me, you know, "Can you help my cousin and his little girl? She's got this hole in her heart, and she needs help." I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, wait, now help me. You're an American, right? I mean, you moved here to help people. No American who's not, you know, one of the bad guys, you don't move here to say no to people." He said, "You moved here to say yes to people, right? I mean, you moved here to help us. So come on, Jeremy, say yes to us. Say yes to my cousin. Say yes to his little daughter. Just try for us." And what was happening in that moment was that the same thing that a lot of you have gone through as you have had your big idea, as you've had your moment, you've had your inciting incident where you see the need or you have the inspiration or the insight, as we saw earlier this morning, and you get gripped by fear. You think, I don't know what the next step is. I don't know how I would possibly go about addressing this situation in front of me. And what I needed was for him to help me reframe fear in that moment. He took this big issue, this little girl and her whole life, and he didn't let it remain strictly about that. He didn't make it about, well, she's going to die if you don't help her. He didn't say that. It might have worked, but that's not the approach he took with me. What he did was he said, look, we are destitute, and we're already stuck. There's nothing you can add to our life that would make our life worse right now. So try. Just try. If you jump in with us and you try and do something for us, maybe it'll work. But if it doesn't work, you're not going to hurt us. You're not going to make our life any worse off. And he reframed my fear so it wasn't about me failing this little girl and her dying because I didn't come through. Instead, he took the fear and he helped turn it on its head a little bit. And he said, but what if we succeed? I think sometimes we get paralyzed by this what if we fail moment. And what we need to do is we need to say, when we fail, then what? We are going to fail in these endeavors that we've all set our minds to, whether it's strictly business or it's on the nonprofit side or it's some kind of hybrid social entrepreneurship thing. We are going to fail, and we need to embrace that. We need to get rid of the what if we fail moment, and we need to say, when we fail, what if we succeed? So this guy helped kind of ease me into this moment, and I ultimately, before leaving that table that day, agreed that I would meet with him, the cousin, and see what we could do. So a couple days later, cousin comes into the coffee shop, and as he rounds the corner, and one of the best decisions he ever made, he had at his side his little girl. And as she rounded the corner and, my eyes met hers, I'm done. I'm a goner. I'm totally in this thing. I don't know how we're going to save her life, but we are sure going to do whatever we can. They sit down at the table, and in this really simple, maybe divine, providential act, he pulls out this report. And on the report, it says something that was really simple, something that I could understand. Not a doctor, but I could understand this. It said at the bottom, hole in heart. Okay, that sounds simple enough. I mean, if it's a hole in heart, maybe it just needs to be patched up, and maybe there's just someone who actually knows how to do that. So we jumped in with this family. I took the report. I agreed to kind of knock around on a few doors, make a few phone calls, and see what I could do to possibly add something to the matrix of what this family needed to maybe, possibly, somewhere down the line, maybe, save this child's life. And to my surprise, I promised this guy, I said, look, I'll take your report, but I promise you I'm going to fail you. I promise you I'm not going to come through for you. So I took the report, made a few phone calls, and within the first or second phone call, I got this person on the phone who said, oh, I know all about that. Yeah, bring the report over. This is a big issue here in Iraq. You're not the first one to stumble upon this. We've got a stack of files this high on our desk of kids that have arrived just in recent days and weeks, waiting in line for these life-saving heart surgeries. So the more I dug and the more I started asking questions about why is this the case? Why are files stacking up in Iraq where children are waiting for these life-saving heart surgeries? And as we got into it a little bit more, we've come to identify three main suspects for why this situation is the way it is. I'll boil it down to some of the more nefarious of them. Heart defects occur all around the world. They happen here in Atlanta. But you have a phenomenal hospital here in Atlanta and across the U.S., such that there is no child in the U.S. who goes without heart surgery. Whereas in Iraq, there are perhaps tens of thousands of children in a country much, much smaller than the U.S. who are waiting in line. And so there are some nefarious, some very unseemly kind of factors that are contributing to this. So one of the first things that we started hearing over and over and over again, why are there so many kids? Saddam Hussein's usage of sulfur mustard gas against the people of Iraq has apparently, according to studies, led to up to a 400% increase in children who are born from men who are exposed to that gas. The mustard gas it causes genetic mutations, and so generations, it seems, may continue to be born now with holes in their hearts and other such structural problems. The next major thing we started hearing about was people started talking about the UN sanctions against Iraq, this U.S.-led moment, decade, the 90s, where after the Gulf War, we continued to create this blockade against Iraq so that they couldn't get a lot of products in. This led to a destruction of their systems, many of their systems. It led to a cannibalization of hospitals and it led to widespread malnutrition, disease, and we're still reaping some of the fallout from that this many decades, years later. So this UN sanctions era and malnutrition and what that does to women while they're pregnant, while destroying the very hospitals that they would have needed to just carry on basic services. So you got a bunch of kids coming online while the ability to serve them was going down at the same time. But the third major suspect that I heard, I was totally unprepared for. And that was when U.S. soldiers, friends of mine, people I knew, started raising their hand in private and in public and started saying, you know what? The Iraqis aren't the only ones. I did my tour in Iraq, and I came back, and now my child was born with a heart defect. My child was born with cerebral palsy. My child was born with spina bifida. Soldiers over and over and over from the U.S., the U.K. were saying this. We're telling this story, and they started to speculate, themselves, soldiers started to suggest that U.S. weapons and other Western weapons have somehow created some kind of environmental contamination that is affecting both U.S. soldiers and the people of Iraq who are left to live in these environments where these weapons were deployed. I was completely unprepared for that. And I mean, these were friends of mine. These were people that had helped kind of shape who I was and how I thought about Iraq. I mean, these were people who had mantras like, shoot first, ask questions later. These were friends that when I sat over tea, we talked about how you would shoot them all, let God sort them out. I mean, these are some of the coping mechanisms and some of the ways that a lot of my people and their people thought about Iraq. But when this little girl entered our life, and when these tens of thousands of children came in view for us, I knew that I couldn't solve this problem if I kept those same kind of mantras in place. That was a gripping fear. That was a way of living that was rooted in fear. And there wasn't going to be any way forward if that fear continued to grip us. And so in reframing the fears that held me so tightly, we took some of those very mantras and we stood them on their head. We said, what if? What if we didn't shoot first and ask questions later? What if we loved first and asked questions later? What if we didn't kill them all and let Allah sort them out? What if we loved them all indiscriminately and let God sort that out? And so we jumped in with this family and met a ton of people along the way. And one of the first ways that we began to address this problem was with this pair of shoes, a locally handmade thing from one particular group in Iraq, the Kurdish people. We didn't have any money. We didn't know how to send this girl to surgery. We didn't have any resources with which to do that. But we stumbled across this pair of shoes in a market one day. And we thought, what if we could sell these shoes and a male version of them as well to people in America, use the profits and use the profits to send this girl to surgery. So we jumped in with that whole hog and started selling shoes all over the place. We'd come back to America, go to university campuses, colleges, and churches and things like that. Everywhere I went, it seemed that this guy Tom was there before me. And this was, 2006, 2007. So Tom was always one step ahead of me, and I couldn't ever actually get these shoes to quite get the traction that we needed. They were successful. We sold, tens of thousands of dollars worth of shoes, helped a lot of kids with them, but we were never going to be able to scale what we were doing this way. Moreover, Iraq didn't have, as I've said, the hospital or the capacity to do these surgeries themselves. So we were sending these kids outside the country. That wasn't a very sustainable option either. So after doing this for years, selling shoes, sending kids to Israel, sending kids to Turkey for surgeries, we looked at what we'd accomplished. And we said, we've been doing this a couple years. We've helped all of 60 kids. Now, on the one hand, that's exciting. We've saved 60 lives. I mean, that is more than we hoped we would do when this one little girl entered our life. But on the other hand, there's still tens of thousands of kids waiting for these life-saving heart surgeries, and we've done almost nothing to change their reality. So we put a full stop to this. We stopped selling shoes. We changed the whole business model. And we began importing solutions to Iraq. We began bringing doctors and nurses from Atlanta, from Memphis, from other places in the U.S. to stand alongside Iraqis in their war zones, in their difficult situations, with bombs going off outside, and training them in their hospitals with their resources to do what they needed to do so they could solve this problem going forward. I don't want to be living in Iraq 20 years from now, but I do want Iraq to be better off. I do want Iraq to be able to have the skills they need in their hands to overcome this problem on their own. So we've been training them. Now, in shelving the shoe product and shelving the shoe project in a lot of ways, we've seen a lot better returns than we could have imagined. Today we do millions of dollars in revenue a year. We have millions of dollars of contracts with the Iraqi government. God willing, next month we will perform our 1,000th heart surgery in Iraq. And thank you. We provided 55,000 hours of training to Iraqis. And one of the things that I haven't even been able to get into, but it's in the book, is the way in which these surgeries are a pathway to peace for people. I mean, right now, over the last month, you've seen in the headlines how this Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham is devastating the northern part of our country, Iraq. How they're running through villages and beheading people that we know and love, how they're marking the homes of Christians with the letter N and saying, get out, convert, pay this submission tax, or face the sword. I mean, Iraq is in a bad place right now, still in many places and in many ways. But what we've seen over and over and over again is that people must collaborate to save the lives of these kind of kids. And when they put their hands to something like this, when they come alongside one another, some of these old stories fall away. This notion that you're against me and I'm against you and we can never come together, these are solvable solutions. When you put people together, when you cross borders, when you sit across a table from people, we have seen it in 1,000 children's lives with 1,000 moms and 1,000 dads in 1,000 neighborhoods across the country. How this problem can be addressed, how it can be improved upon. This is not my project. This is something that the Iraqi people themselves care deeply, deeply about. And as I come back, as I make these jaunts back to America briefly and spend time here, one of the most disturbing things that I appeal to you in my final moments, please do not give up on the Middle East. Please do not give up on Iraq. I want to give some other application. I want to speak this notion that we call preemptive love into your life, but my moments are winding down. I want you to be able to overcome the fears in your life. I want you to be able to take the things that most grip you and reframe them. I want to do all that, and we can do that over coffee later. But the appeal I want to make is don't give up on the Middle East. These things have been going on for centuries, but there are solutions. I've brought a book for the first 100 people who want to help us in this way. When we first started sending children to heart surgery, we'd pay about $10,000 to get a kid out to Turkey. When we started bringing in solutions to Iraq, we dropped that price to about $2,000. And now today, as we've continued to offload more and more to the Iraqi government, as we've given them more and more of the responsibility, we've increased the ROI on our donors' dollars, where we produce about $61 for every dollar that an American like you would give. And now the cost of a surgery today is $250. So we've got... So I know you all have your own things going on, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to do it. I've got 100 books for the first 100 people that will come back and join us in trying to continue investing in the people of Iraq. Never mind the politics. These are kids. These are families. These are people minutes away from me who are being driven from their homes, beheaded, entire cultures being eradicated off the face of the planet. We're not giving up. And if you're willing to join us, we would love to talk with you more about that at the booth afterwards. Thanks.